Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a while since I've had a chance to upload some videos, but recently one of my friends bought a Lucid Air and he already had a Taycan 4S, and I figured I'd try to compare the two cars because these are cars I'm interested in buying perhaps one day as well. We'll talk about the looks in a minute, but the Lucid Air is on the left, and it has a whopping 620 brake horsepower and 885 newton meters of torque, and it goes from 0 to 60 in a crazy 3 seconds. If you think of it, it is really crazy for such a big car. Now the braking is not so great. It stops from 70 to 0 in 193 feet, and it has a very low drag coefficient of 0.197. The Porsche Taycan 4S on the right has 562 horsepower and 650 newton meters of peak torque. It goes from 0 to 60 in official Porsche figures are 3.8 seconds, but a lot of people have tested it and it goes from as fast as 3.2 to 3.4 seconds. And in typical Porsche fashion, they usually tend to underestimate their numbers. The braking is great, similar to a sports car, 70 to 0 in only 147 feet. It has a drag coefficient that is slightly higher than the Lucid of 0.22. You know, to put things in perspective, I was looking at the drag coefficient of the Bugatti Veyron, and that is 0.36, so it's higher than both of these cars. But I guess when you're a gasoline car and have a big engine, what matters more is downforce, so you need more air to create downforce, so that increases the drag a little bit. To help with aero, in addition to the teardrop shaped, it also has air intake vents to help, and the wheels are aero wheels as well. Now the Lucid is a fairly handsome car. You know, when you look at it from the front, the sides are good as well. But the back, I'm not quite so sure. You can see these gaping panel gaps in the back, and it almost feels like, you know, another part of a car was cut and pasted to this car. The rear taillight cluster is quite attractive with Lucid written on it. And, you know, you can decide if you like the rear of the car. I'm not a great fan, but, you know, from certain angles it looks okay. However, I do think it looks stunning from the front. And, you know, certain angles from the side it looks very nice as well. And the two-toned exterior is so unique. You know, this car is certainly a looker and gets a lot of stares. While the Lucid looks a little more elegant from the front, the Porsche looks much more aggressive and more sports car like. It has a lowered stance, and I do think the overall look of the Taycan is very, very good. Obviously, Porsche has been building cars for years, so the external tolerances for the panel gaps are very tight, and, you know, you don't see any big panel gaps, and the exterior build quality looks much better. The rear of the car flows very nicely with the rest of the car, and overall the car is very, very handsome indeed. Here are the key fobs of both cars. The Lucid key fob is really unique in a very sleek looking material of plastic. The Porsche's is a little thicker, there are physical buttons on it, and it looks like a car as well. The problem with the Lucid key is that some of the buttons in the back are very hard to see, and it's very hard to see what they do. And sometimes when you press on it, nothing happens. As you walk towards the car, the door handles pop out like in many other electric cars, and then as you climb in and look inside, the interior is a very, very nice place to be in. It's amazing that a car company that is so young has managed to create an interior that rivals German manufacturers that have been in business for years, and these materials are so nice to touch, and they are top-notch quality, and cheap plastic parts are very hard to find in this car. Once you get in and start the car, the seats seem to travel quite a long distance to get you in the right position. And then there are lots of screens in this car. There's a screen on the right, then there's a screen on the middle which is not touch screen, and there's another screen on the left which has a lot of shortcuts and is touch screen as well. And in addition, there's a large third screen down here that controls a lot of the car's functions. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about all the functions. If you've seen enough Lucid videos, you know that this screen up here can mirror a lot of the functions below on the screen bottom. So if you want to input navigation destinations. It's easier to do it on the screen down here, and then you can pull the navigation up and have other stuff showing in the bottom screen, like the seat controls, ambient lighting. This particular car does not have massage features, and then this is where you would change the drive mode of the car from slow to super fast. So there's lots of things, and in fact the whole owner's manual is loaded here, so you can go through it if you want to. If you do want to use a sprint mode, you'll have to go through a warning and agree to a certain set of terms and conditions before you do it, because this mode is super fast. And this is how you open the glove box. The reversing camera is extremely well executed. You can touch on it and go to a 3D view, and you'll know exactly where you are. As everyone knows by now, this screen stows away and creates some useful storage behind it, and another touch on the button and the screen comes right back down. The rear door opens 90 degrees, and there's loads of room in the back seat, which really separates it from the Taycan. The interior build quality and the material fit and finish here is excellent. There is individual climate control for the rear occupants. There are unique touches all throughout, and the amazing panoramic glass roof is just breathtaking. An unexpected storage area, maybe for a bottle of wine. The Lucid offers a cavernous trunk, although it may not be the easiest for loading things in and out. There's some hidden storage as well. There is quite a bit of space, both apparent and not apparent, in the front as well. In the little time that I spent with the car, I found a few design flaws. One is that the driver's side controls are very hard to reach. In between the door frame and the seat, there's very little space, so it's very hard to get to the controls, especially the one at the very bottom. Once you open the central cubby, there are two wireless charging pads, and I think these are extremely poorly designed. If you look into it, you can see two rubber knobs which push in quite far in, and there's very little space to put your phones in. I suppose they may have designed it so the phones don't fly off, but it's very, very hard to press your phone in, and then once you pull it out, you can see these marks left by the rubber bushes, and I'm very worried about my phone screen. Also, if you have a cover on it, it is nearly impossible to slide it on and off, and so it's pretty much useless. The magnetic covers on these mirrors look aesthetically good, but once you open them, well, it's sometimes a little hard to get them open, but once you do open them, there's no way to keep it open, right? They fall down, so you need to have either one hand on the mirror all the time, or you need to use two hands, which is not ideal when driving. These airflow control stalks are something you interact with a lot, and they don't seem the best of quality, and they kind of feel a little flimsy and probably not up to par with the rest of the interior. The seating position is quite comfortable, and most of the controls are within easy reach. The steering wheel is nice and thick and is at the perfect distance from the seat. One thing that stood out was the feel of the accelerator pedal. The accelerator appeared to be a little more stiffer than I'm used to in other cars, and it seemed like there needed to be more effort that needed to get the car going. And also there were weird noises, almost like an air hissing, or maybe from an air compressor every time you press on the accelerator. And also the electric engine whine is quite prominent. Once it gets going, the car is extremely smooth. The suspension is great. And the electronic whine, almost like a jet engine taking off, is quite pleasing. This model does not have the air suspension, but the coilover springs are still tuned for comfort, and they are extremely comfortable. When there are large road imperfections, you can feel the jolts into the cabin, but it is quite muted and the car settles down quite nicely after that. Merging into the highway and accelerating is a breeze given the enormous power and torque this car has. I did try the sprint mode after going through the acknowledgements that Lucid needs on the screen. And then in sprint mode, the car is insane. It's crazy how such a large family sedan accelerates. And remember, this is there's a version of Lucid that is even more powerful than this, so it is crazy. In fact, this mode was so powerful that after a while I switched it off because I was scared. How does it handle corners? It's okay, it's a large car, so you have to be careful where your wheels are. But then once you're past the corner, you can accelerate lightning fast to your next corner. And then, like I said, it's a big car, so there is, quite a bit of body roll in the corners, and the handling is not as confident as you would like in perhaps another car like the Porsche Taycan. But again, I think these two cars are geared towards different buyers. The brakes on this car are very good, and they do a good job in slowing down the car. However, it is probably not quite as quick and direct as a Porsche. The steering is precise, but there is no feel through the steering. As someone who has never driven a Lucid before, as I was driving back, I was trying to collect my thoughts on this car. And obviously what struck me was, for a car company, in its first attempt at creating a car, has created such a beautiful and well put together interior. I think this is probably what the Tesla interior should have been like. But the interior is very nice, well put together, luxurious feeling. The car is also very fast. But remember, outright speed is not something you're going to enjoy every day. You're not going to accelerate in the sprint mode every day to work, for instance, and obviously it's going to impact the range. So it's a good party trick, but I don't think it's going to affect your overall enjoyment of the car. The car is also very comfortable. The suspension, although it's not an air suspension in this model, is still very comfortable. On the highway, it's very quiet. In fact, I used my phone and measured the highway speed at around 63 decibels at 60 miles per hour. And my BMW X7, which is a very comfortable and quiet car, was about 64 decibels at the same speed in the same road. And the Porsche Taycan was about 65 to 66 decibels on the same road. So it's a very quiet car. The brakes are extremely good, but not quite as good as a Porsche's. There's some of the niggles with the car. Obviously, they'll probably improve this over time, or some of the ergonomics that I mentioned earlier. For instance, it's hard to reach the seat controls. The magnetic cover for the mirrors are hard to open, and then it doesn't stay open. The wireless chargers are pretty much useless. And some of the lower speed issues, such as the effort it takes to press the accelerator, some of the hissing and unwanted noises, and also the prominent electric whine at low speeds are some of the niggles, but I bet these things will improve with time. The Porsche Taycan also has multiple screens. The navigation screen is quite responsive. And unlike the Lucid, you can't bring the navigation screen on the bigger screen below. The Porsche also has a screen for the passengers all the way to the right. The airflow direction cannot be changed physically. You have to change it through the screen. This can be distracting when you're driving. The wireless charger on this car is easier to access, and the phone slides in quite easily and charges well. Though personally, I would like it positioned towards the front of the car, like in Teslas and BMWs, where you can actually see the screen as it is charging. The vanity mirrors on this car can be opened with one finger, and it can stay open. Between the trunk and the front, the Taycan has less space than the Lucid. When you get into the Taycan, what do you notice? You sit much lower than in the Lucid. The steering position, as with all Porsches, are excellent. The seat tends to hold you in much better, and there is much better side bolstering on the seats. Also, at low speed and at idle, the Taycan is much more quieter and appears slightly more refined than the Lucid. And I checked using my phone, and the Lucid was 48.6 decibel at rest, and the Taycan was 41.5 decibel at rest. The Porsche has adjustable air suspension, and when you put it on sports mode, the car lowers itself and is much more sportier. Also, at low speeds, there's much less resistance to depressing the accelerator, and it feels like an easier car to drive at low speeds. Even when regen is on, the Porsche drives more like a normal car. And so if you want to do one pedal driving, then the Lucid is a car for you, because with the Porsche, you have to hit the brakes to engage regenerative braking. Porsche accelerates quite fast as well, but it's not as blisteringly quick as the Lucid in a straight line. Now, the suspension of the Porsche feels slightly better than the Lucid, but only marginally so. When you go over a prominent road imperfection, the jolt comes into the cabin in both cars, but it feels like the Porsche Taycan settles down much quicker and tends to bounce very slightly less than the Lucid. The Porsche stays flatter on a curve and accelerates effortlessly onto the highway. I found the Porsche to be a much easier car to drive fast. So in a corner it stays flat, and then it accelerates fast enough on the straights, and then before the next curve you can slam on the brakes and take the curve without much body roll, and the car handles almost like a 911. It's very natural to drive fast. The lack of one pedal driving just makes it easier to take corners like a sports car. One thing I didn't talk about was the range. The Lucid has the longest ranges of any electric cars tested. The Lucid Air Touring has a claimed range of 425 miles, which is much higher than the Porsche with the extended battery pack, with a range of 250 miles. That being said, I'm not entirely sure what the real world ranges are going to be. The Porsche, my friend told me that he used to get as much as 270 and 280 miles, and that's typical of Porsche. That tends to undercall and underquote their numbers. Whereas I've seen some internet reports that this particular Lucid may get as low as 280 miles of range, but then only time will tell what the actual range is going to be. Having driven these cars back to back through the same roads, what are my final thoughts? Remember, the Lucid is rated number 1 best luxury car by Car and Driver, and the Taycan is rated number 2. This doesn't mean that one car is better than the other. I just think these cars are basically for two different type of buyers. Now the Lucid, will appeal to people who want more comfort, especially at highway speeds. They want more range, and they're going to be early adopters of a new car company, and the glitches and the trials that may come with owning such a car. And obviously there's more space both in the rear and cargo compartment. And the interior is well put together and is on par with any luxury car. The Porsche is going to appeal to people who want a sports car experience without sacrificing too much comfort or luxury. It is a superbly comfortable car on the highway. As I said earlier, although technically this is a slower accelerating car than the Lucid, it's an easier car to drive really fast, especially around corners. the rear cargo space and trunk space is smaller than in the Lucid. Remember, Lucid also sells batteries to Formula E racing, so their battery technology is well proven. And the battery range of the Lucid is higher than that of the Taycan. As I wrapped up the day with both cars, I was thinking, which car would I choose if I had to buy one? And I think I would choose a Porsche just because, for me, I love driving cars and the driving experience is more important. And then I was asking my friends and they said they would choose the Lucid just because it's a little more comfortable. There's more luxury inside and the range is much greater, and there's the excitement of owning a car from a new car company. Regardless, all I can say is that competition is always a good thing. I do hope Lucid doesn't go bankrupt in a few years because that car is amazing, and I do hope they come out with more and more models. As always, thank you guys for tuning in and watching this review. It took a long time for me to prepare this, and appreciation in the form of a subscription and a thumbs up would be much greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.